not too sure.
Conflicting versions, claims and unaccounted for videos have been doing the rounds since this morning. Most of you must have seen it on your social media timelines. Now, after the initial news reports of Pakistan's aircraft violating Indian airspace, there have also been official statements, 3 in all. 1 from the Ministry of External Affairs here in India and 2 from Pakistan. 1 from the army and 1 from Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan. So based on all of this, this is what we know so far for sure. There was a retaliation of sorts by the Pakistani Air Force this morning. They claim Indian assets were targeted but not hit, and the effort was to display capability but not create collateral damage. India's official statement says the Pak Air Force was pushed back and 1 aircraft on their side hit. India has also lost 1 aircraft and a pilot is missing in action, is what India has officially said. Pakistan claims they have him. Now, what happens next? To speak more on this, I'm joined now by former Ambassador Virendra Gupta, Richard Rossow, who's the Wadhwani Chair in US-India Policy Studies, CSIS, and Manoj Joshi, Distinguished Fellow at ORF. Welcome to all of you and thank you for speaking with us today at Bloomberg Quint. I want to start by asking you, Mr. Joshi, how do you see the events since this morning and how they've panned out, especially in terms of perception, which is where some of this conflict is being fought as well, isn't it?
That's true. And I think what we've seen is yesterday certain developments took place. And if you do a summing up of the events yesterday, you see that India had made some very clear statements with regard to counter-terror actions. They had undertaken new measures. They have redrawn the so-called red lines by targeting a terrorist camp in Pakistan. They had used air power. That's another new development. And to top it all, they had got this broad support of the international community. Even China, which is very friendly to Pakistan, has taken a kind of took a very even-handed stand yesterday. They basically said they called on both sides for restraint. And the official state spokesperson in Beijing yesterday said, yes, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, the Pakistani foreign minister, had called him, but he had listened to his version of events, but again called on India and Pakistan to exercise restraint. So that was yesterday. Today this has happened, and definitely if an Indian pilot has been captured by Pakistan, it does constitute a setback, but I would say a relatively minor setback, for the simple reason that if you are in conflict, if you are in undertaking warlike action, there are bound to be losses. And I think this capture is extremely unfortunate, and the Pakistanis will of course play it to the hilt as far as they are concerned. They will use the propaganda value from it, but I don't think that should detract from what happened yesterday and the fact that new red lines have been established. And I wouldn't even say red lines. I think what we have done is really extend, we have established our red lines, saying that if you attack us, if there are terrorist attacks on India, please be ready to face consequences, even in Pakistan.
Okay, so from what I understand, we drew a red line. Pakistan has retaliated and tried to take the moral high ground in the perception game. I mean, we can't deny that, because they say today that, you know, we still want to talk about peace, we still want to talk about peace, don't escalate. I want, here Mr. Gupta to come in on his views on the India official statement so far. There was a 30-second briefing by the Ministry of External Affairs and one para of a statement put out. loads of sources to various news agencies, which I'm discounting right now because let's go with what is official. Do you think that we've answered clearly enough and with enough detail to the onslaught of information coming in from the Pakistani side?
Well, there is clearly a provocation from Pakistani side, but we responded to it in good measure and shot down the intruding aircraft. Unfortunately, we lost our own aircraft in that process. I think so far it seems to me that this conflict has been contained and it has not escalated very badly. And I think we should leave it at that. There is enough opening for us. Both Pakistani military and Prime Minister Imran Khan himself have counseled for peace and not allowing the conflict to escalate. In fact, I was very struck by what Imran Khan said, that in war there are miscalculations, and I think we should not discount that. So far, what has happened is that we have undertaken a strike yesterday against a terror camp, and Pakistan was bound to retaliate. This morning when they retaliated, they issued a statement, and I think it is a very carefully worded statement from their side, that their strike was also against non-military targets, avoiding the human loss and avoiding collateral damage. So I think all these signals coming in from Pakistan at this stage clearly point out that they are not wanting escalation, and India has also said the same thing. So I think what has happened is very unfortunate. From our point of view, we have very clearly and resolutely conveyed a message to Pakistan establishment that terror attacks would not be tolerated,
yes,
and that we were ready to take it a step further.
I know Rick Rossow is waiting by, and Rick, I'm just going to make you wait for a couple of more minutes because I just want to come back to my Indian experts first, Mr. Manoj Joshi and Mr. Gupta. In the middle of all of this, we've not spoken about that one Indian Air Force pilot that is missing in action and that Pakistan claims they have. They claim they have two. And I think it would be incorrect not to address that situation and what people are feeling and seeing and thinking about it at that time. That's why I'm going to come back to you first, Mr. Gupta. If, in fact, Pakistan's claims are true, we have said we still have to verify them. But if they have our guy, doesn't that put us in a tricky situation, and where does it go from here?
You see, we'll have to deal with it through diplomatic channels. Pakistan has already admitted to holding our Air Force pilot. So I think we'll have to follow that process. I think we should resist the temptation of escalating the tensions at this stage, because we must remember that jingoism doesn't help. And yesterday's statement was very significant, that this action was taken by us in self-defense as a preemptive strike to prevent further terrorist attacks to be launched by Jaish-e-Mohammed against us. So I think it is not a victory.
Yeah.
And
Mr. Gupta, I'm just going to interrupt you for a second. I'm just going to interrupt you for a second because Congress President Rahul Gandhi just reading out a joint statement of 21 opposition parties right now.
And praised our armed forces for their valor and their bravery. The meeting of 21 parties expressed their deep anguish over the blatant politicization of the sacrifices made by our armed forces by leaders of the ruling party. National security must transcend narrow political considerations. The leaders observed that the Prime Minister has regrettably not convened an all-party meeting as per the established practice in our democracy. The leaders expressed concern on the emerging security situation. Post the statement from the MEA regarding targeting of our military installations and loss of one of our fighter aircraft, the leaders condemned the Pakistani misadventure and expressed their deep concern for the safety of our missing pilot. Leaders urged the government to take the nation into confidence on all measures to protect India's sovereignty, unity and integrity. Thank you.
Okay, that was Congress President Rahul Gandhi reading out from a statement prepared by 21 opposition parties on the current situation. But here on this show, we're focusing on the geopolitical ramifications of what we've seen. So we will stick to that. Let me come to you, Mr. Rossow, on how you see this situation evolving as someone who studies US-India policy, but India also very closely, and what we've seen in the last couple of days. Do you think there's enough room on both sides to de-escalate?
I think there's enough room. I mean, you need to find that moment when both sides can walk away and claim that they got some level of victory, and they can claim credit for that, and that's the day they can walk away. But there's four different forces that are driving between both India and Pakistan. Of course, with India, you've got a vibrant democracy, and so the people have a pretty strong say in terms of what they expect their government to do and to react when you have terror attacks, and to follow through with that. But in Pakistan, you have this strange dual beast where you have a weak civilian government, but of course a military that really drives most of the establishment and will really take the final call on when it's time to stand down. And they're not as much driven, of course, by elections and voters, so a little bit more space on the Pakistan side, as well as a bit tighter control in the media. So when you look at the two sides, there's different factors that drive both. Pakistan wants to have at least a little bit of tension in the relationship at all times, because that's what allows the military to retain its position, top governance in the country. But I do think they also don't want to make sure this spills over more widely, because they've seen this time versus 2002 versus 1999, the world has taken a side more starkly than ever before, and clearly in India's side, even China, as a previous speaker had mentioned. So very different, I think, Pakistan reaction they're seeing from the world this time versus previous times tensions have escalated.
That's an important point. And Mr. Joshi, if you can come in on that, of course. But before that, the point I was making before about the wing commander. Again, as of now, there is a claim by Pakistan that they have two of our pilots there. There's a video which was unverified, and India says there's one person who's missing in action. Can we just sit here and say that, you know, these setbacks take place? If truly, indeed, they have an Indian Air Force pilot in their custody, how fast should we be moving to ensure his safe return?
Well, I think I'm quite convinced that they do have an Indian pilot, at least one of them. I've seen a couple of those videos, and it's highly unlikely that they would get an actor to play an Indian pilot for the videos. So I think they do have it, and I'm quite surprised as to why the Indian Air Force is not acknowledging the fact that the Pakistanis have one of their men. But as you know, these things are governed by the Geneva Convention, meaning the treatment of people who are captured like that. So the officer here, I think, has given his IC number, his number and his name. I think we need to move fast, certainly. I certainly would not like an Indian pilot to be in Pakistani captivity beyond a point. But the Pakistanis may be similarly thinking as to how best they could milk the situation from the publicity point of view. And that is something which one has to worry about, because if the larger situation de-escalates, I mean, you yourself have put forward this proposition as to the importance of de-escalation. I think we can only get the release of that pilot quickly if the larger situation de-escalates, both sides declare victory and walk away from it. And I think the point was made, I think, by Mr. Gupta, that the statements both emanating in Delhi as well as in Islamabad, the official statements, have been very careful. They have been very, very carefully drafted. And I think they do provide that room for escape. And I think even the position taken by the United States and China, basically calling on both sides for dialogue, etc., I think this is the moment where that could be done and further escalation be avoided.
I want to come to Rick just once more on the point you were making, that this time is different in terms of how the international community has responded, with major countries, in a sense, picking a side. So India has that backing. But what do we do with it now? In the current situation where we may have an Indian Air Force pilot in Pakistani custody, we don't want that to be used as a bargaining tool of sorts. We want to find a way out of this which leads to something, because remember, all of this started as a strike against terror. What options do you see before India right now, Rick?
Well, I think the military options, we sort of have an idea about what those are, if they decide to go back, attack other terror camps and things like that. But I think in terms of the global community and taking a side, you're not going to see, I think, a lot of foreigners flying in and trying to be the peace brokers, like, again, what you've seen in previous times. India is more widely recognized than ever before as a responsible state actor dealing with the terror organization in a neighboring country that has impacted certainly the United States and others. And so I think by and large, for military options and for direct diplomacy, we'll make the odd statement now and again, calling for a peaceful resolution. But you're not going to see this kind of shuttle diplomacy, because we know that India has the capacity to handle that. What I think is more important in terms of how the international community looks at this is all the non-military steps that I expect India will double down on. Can the United Nations Security Council take a stronger stand against Pakistan's support for terror? Blocking IMF lending, that's something that's being talked about right now a little bit. So there's all kinds of alternative measures using international systems right now to continue to corner and isolate Pakistan, hoping that will change behavior. And I think those are the areas where the credibility that India has, tremendous credibility in the international community, can really come to bear. So we'll watch that one very closely.
Okay, so that's one part of it, is the pressure we can build in the international community based on the credibility we have. The other question is, of course, what do we do next vis-a-vis what Pakistan is saying? And here, Mr. Gupta, I want to ask you, because officially, like I said in the beginning of the show, there have been 3 statements, 2 from Pakistan, 1 from India. Ours has been a very factual, terse statement, not making any great comment, and a careful one. On the Pakistani side, both the army press conference and Imran Khan's press conference, though it was hugely edited, on the face of it, makes an appeal for peace, says let's not escalate. Now, to a third person listening to this, it would sound that they're sounding reasonable right now. Why should they not be taken at face value?
Well, very often in situations like this, one doesn't act rationally and with a reasonable response. So I think, in a sense, the response that has come from Pakistan is far better than what I had feared, actually. Because when we struck against a terror camp inside Pakistani territory, we justified it as our right to undertake a preemptive strike. But from Pakistan's standpoint, it was India violating their sovereignty. And I think one would have been naive not to expect some kind of retaliatory action by Pakistan. Because they need face saving. Pakistan also, government and military, also needs to show to its public that they have responded to the provocation from India. So I think, all said and done, having undertaken their retaliatory action, in which they lost a plane and we lost a fighter aircraft, it's very unfortunate that our pilot is in their custody. And I think the entire nation is very concerned about the safety and well-being of our pilot, and I hope that we would be able to get him back to our country. But as I said earlier, I think this response from both sides has been contained, and it seems that I'm very hopeful now. All things point to the situation that it will be now contained and it will not be escalated any further. And mind you, I must also point out that Pakistan does realize the futility of escalation.
Yeah.
Because if it were to have escalated, it would go in absolutely against Pakistan's own interests. In fact, former President Musharraf has already warned Pakistani establishment that any escalation, any misadventure on Pakistani part will lead to its own devastation.
Yeah, well, I don't know if escalation is what any leaders on both sides want, but how next do we bring this down a notch? Mr. Gupta is pretty optimistic. Do you share that optimism, Mr. Joshi?
Well, I think I would say that the conditions are there in the sense India wanted to show that we have the right to strike at terror camps, and that we wanted. Don't forget that the beginning of this story is the worst attack on Indian paramilitary forces in the history of the Kashmir conflict. So, if anyone expected India would not retaliate, I think they were living in fool's paradise. And likewise, I think knowing the psychology of the Pakistan army, the enormous insecurity they perceive vis-a-vis India, it was a bit, I'm not surprised that they did react, but if you look at the reaction, it's a highly structured one, in the sense they claim that they fired from their side of the LOC, and they fired at non-military targets. Now there are virtually no, meaning either they are civilian targets, so they've knocked out some civilian houses. I'm not sure about that, but I think what they're trying to say is that they made a demonstration strike. So they have demonstrated that they will react to Indian what they call provocation. So that having been done, I think all the conditions are there for the two sides to now de-escalate. Now, of course, there are the fact that there's an election on India, that the ruling party is utilizing this to its own benefit, which I suppose one can't grudge them that, because if you're a political party going in for elections, you do seek to utilize something like this. But at the same time, it should not encourage escalatory pressures.
Yeah, I do kind of grudge it, Mr. Joshi. I'm so sorry, but I just really feel the need to come in. I think we should grudge it if a political party intends to, use this for political gains. These are real lives at stake. This is a very serious situation. I know maybe political parties can't help themselves, but I think we shouldn't give them such a easy way out, saying, "Oh, it's all right." It's not all right.
No. I'm not arguing that. All I'm trying to say is that in democracies, when elections take place, people tend to take the low road.
Yeah.
Okay. And politicians in particular take the low road. They say all sorts of things to each other. They are very nasty. The elections divide people. All that is a fact in democratic elections. So likewise, if people tom-tom a military action like this, I'm just sort of trying to understand it, saying that it's there.
Yeah.
And that may cause the government to further escalate because of the pilot. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that unless and until that pilot issue is diffused quickly, either diplomatically or through other means, if that can be diffused quickly, I think then people can wind down this whole crisis.
All right. Let's hope where this goes. I want to thank all of you for joining us on the show and sharing your insights in a situation which is changing very quickly, newer facts emerging, and we're trying to stay right on top of it with the best analysis we can bring you. Thank you for watching.